100,000 children that are missing. Many of them are dead, and many of them are in sex rings and all sorts of things going on. It's a terrible thing.
Can't just be the Wild West when it comes to drones. They can't just be flying anywhere, and people have a right to know what's out there and to have their security protected.
And so the question that we have, which I find it astounding, that the government can't give us any answers. Our military, with its capabilities, it cannot give us any answers as to what these are.
The lack of information is absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah, it's unacceptable.
You think?
Yeah, I'm afraid people are going to take matters into their own hands.
What do you think is going to happen with no answers from the government?
Nothing. And this has been going on for like a month or so.
And then they wonder why the people don't trust government institutions.
It's outrageous.
Started with Fauci lying about COVID. Now we got this.
Yeah.
And we pay for this. You pay for
But
this.
they're fine with their answers. Oh, we're looking into it.
The question is, who's at home? Who's running the White House?
Well, where's Biden? Where's Kamala? Nowhere to be seen. Good morning, folks.
Well, we're here.
I digress. Welcome back to a second hour of Wake Up America Weekend. I'm Deneen Borelli in for Sarah Williamson.
And I'm Tom Borelli in for Michael Grimm. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's Saturday, December 14th. How did that happen? And here's a look at some of the stories we're following just for you this morning.
More and more drones may be filling the sky, but fewer and fewer answers are being offered as to what they are doing there. We'll break it all down with former Secretary of the Interior, Congressman Ryan Zinke.
Plus, incoming border czar Tom Homan laying out plans with New York City Mayor and possibly former Sanctuary City Mayor Eric Adams. Could this be the first step towards saving your town from becoming a border town?
And we're not out of the woods from Bidenomics yet. We'll take a look at what the rest of the year will look like for your wallet and what the Trump administration's plans are to ease the pain. But first, mysterious drone sightings have been reported all over the East Coast, including over New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. Now, lawmakers and officials are calling on the administration for resources in order to help find the cause of these drone activity. For more on this, let's welcome in Montana Congressman Ryan Zinke, friend of the Borellis. It's so good to see you. Good morning.
Great to be with you.
Good morning, Congressman. I feel safe already, just over the airways with you.
Well, it is absolutely stunning, first of all. You know, they're wrong if they don't know. They're wrong if they know and they're not telling us. And they're wrong if they don't have the capability to find out what's going on. You know, it's not that hard. We have sophisticated systems on radar, on Doppler. We certainly can move instrumentation in. You know, if it was me, I'd put a TFR up, a temporary flight restriction zone, concentrate, around areas that we need to protect, and give some certainty and clarity to the American people. But it is stunning that you do it, polls across America, as you point out earlier, after the balloon fiasco, which they let a balloon, wander all the way across the United States before doing anything. And they lied about Afghanistan. They lied about Hunter's laptop. They lied about the pardon. This people of the United States, we don't trust our government, and that's got to change.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So you mentioned that the spy balloon, and that was another one that really shook the American people. I think the first people that actually reported the sky balloon were from your state in Montana, before the government even did anything.
Well, you recall, they didn't know. And then when they did know, they lied to us. And then they said, well, we didn't knock the balloon down because we were fearful of collateral damage on the ground. As you point out, that balloon transited across Petroleum County in Montana. Petroleum County has less people in the county than members of Congress. I think the official census is 434. And it transits all the way across. They don't know what's on it. And then they ditch it at sea. Remember that? They ditch it at sea. And look, I'm a former Navy SEAL. The debris pattern was over 20 miles. And you think you can go hand by hand in a zero visibility and recover something? They recovered what was on the surface and easy, but they lied to us again. And this is the problem. It's been the problem from day one of the Biden administration. Look, they got Admiral Kirby, who is Dr. Spin Master. They put a spin on it. And remember, on this case, with the drones, they said, we have no evidence it's foreign. We have no evidence it's a national security threat. Well, they don't have evidence to the contrary either because they don't know or they're not telling us. Either way, it's wrong.
That's absolutely correct. Well, sir, this week, Secretary of State Antony Blinken testified on the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. Let's take a listen.
And I think today, especially, of the 13 heroes that we lost at Abbey Gate. And I deeply regret that we did not do more and could not do more to protect them. To the extent President Biden faced a choice, it was between ending the war or escalating it. Even the U.S. government's most pessimistic assessments did not anticipate that the Afghan government and security forces would collapse so rapidly in the face of Taliban advances.
With a straight face. All right, Congressman, did he take any accountability for the situation?
No, and I was at the hearing and it was stunning. It was absolutely stunning to go, well, multiple agencies were involved. It certainly wasn't us. It wasn't our decision. It was a joint decision. And let's back it up. First of all, to think that you're going to evacuate and leave Afghanistan from Kabul that has one airstrip, all they had to do is put a little hole in that and nothing was getting out. We are very, very fortunate. We only lost 13 heroes. We could have lost thousands because the Taliban were in control. And in the evacuation, we should have, kept Kandahar. We should have kept Bagram. That would have given us some lift. But the way we did it, it put everyone at jeopardy. And they said, well, our allies, I think this is a quote, our allies were surprised at the speed and efficiency we left. Let's translate that. And our allies were so shocked that I think it was the first time since the War of 1812 that the British Parliament actually censored us. And it was the State Department that did everything they could to prevent people from getting out safely. And then they said, well, we had 110,000 evacuees that we brought out. They had no idea who was in the plane. It was first come, first served. Now we're spending money. We likely have people on the terrorist watch list come to the United States via the State Department. It is outrageous. It was probably the largest and most catastrophic failure of foreign policy. And yet the spin in, it's okay, we did a good job.
And we left a gazillion dollars worth of
unbelievable. Congressman, let's shift a little gears to a happier topic. You're former Navy SEAL, and obviously thank you for your service. I believe you worked with our friend Carl Higbee here. I'm sure that was a lot of fun. But today's
we have 6 SEALs in the House of Representatives and 1 in the Senate. We're halfway there. On Paramount SEAL Pack. And look, we need warriors in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, so
and we have a warrior at the top of the ticket. We have President Trump.
That's what we need. Speaking of warriors.
Congress, that's interesting. We have 220 members, and I kind of tongue-in-cheek and say, you know what? We have 221 members because President Trump is in the House.
Honorary.
Yeah.
So, speaking of warriors, what's going to happen today in the Army-Navy game? Your prediction, sir.
I'm going to go with Navy, but I can tell you both teams are good. And, Army has played a magnificent season all year. They're tough. I've watched them a couple times. Army dropped a game. Maybe they shouldn't have. But when you have 2 teams like this, that every member on that field has pledged to serve our country. Every member on that field has pledged to support the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And you know what? They're not involved in NIL. They're not involved in steroids in the locker room. They're not involved in these multi-million deals. What they are involved in is really good, hard-nosed football. I can't wait to watch the game. And I can tell you, President Trump will be at the game again, and that is lightning on the field.
And he'll be greeted like a rock star that he is. Yes. Congressman Ryan Zinke, sir, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
I thought it was a great meeting, very productive meeting. The mayor understands that New York City as a public safety issue. He's got a lot of illegal aliens that committed crimes in the city, and he wants to work with me to remove those public safety threats. He also wants to work with me to find we've got over 300,000 missing children that were trafficked into this country that this administration cannot find. So he's going to also help me on this human trafficking front. So when it comes to criminal aliens and human trafficking, he's with me.
Well, that was Tom Homan, Donald Trump's incoming border czar, and he was speaking Thursday night with our very own Greta Van Susteren, and they were talking about his meeting with New York City Mayor Eric Adams in New York, saying of the mayor, he's with me.
He's with me. That's a great line. Now, joining us is former New York Congressman and board member of the Independent Women's Forum, Dr. Nan Hayworth, and president and executive editor of the Daily Signal, Robert Bluey. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Nan, let me start with you. What do you make of this meeting between Homan and Mayor Adams, who's obviously a Democrat, forming this partnership to solve this horrendous migrant crisis here in New York City? What is sea change, at least in my perspective? What do you think?
Well, I agree with you, Tom. It's very encouraging. And I think it sparked in part on the mayor's part, and perhaps entirely so. Number one, I do think he genuinely cares about his city. I think he does want to do the right thing. And look, New Yorkers spoke as well. And even though President Trump did not win the city of New York, he and Republicans have made significant advances in the state of New York. And in fact, as we all know, the entire country basically, but for a couple of very small places, shifted red. Governor Pritzker in Illinois is starting to change his tune as well. And I think it's because they recognize that the people they serve are also making clear that they cannot abide the lawlessness, the crime, the harm and the deaths that have occurred among citizens who are simply trying to make their way, raise their families, and work in the city of New York and all over the country. So this is very heartening. Tom Homan needs the cooperation of these mayors and these governors. So to have Eric Adams, the biggest city in the United States and arguably the most important one, that's a big step forward.
Well, Robert, do you expect Homan to form these kinds of partnerships with other mayors and cities around the country? And how much easier does this make his job? Because I've read there's some governors and mayors who are going to refuse to work with him.
Like in Boston.
Yes.
There certainly will be those on the far left who are absolutely opposed to giving any sort of cooperation to Donald Trump or Tom Homan. But as Nan just pointed out, I think that these governors and big city mayors realize that this is an issue that is overwhelmingly popular. People don't want to be living in crime-ridden cities where they feel threatened just to go shopping or to work. And so if Tom Homan is able to get the cooperation of people like Eric Adams or others across the country, I do think it makes the job a lot easier. And remember, Donald Trump and Tom Homan have said they're going to focus first on those violent criminals who are here illegally. I mean, eventually, yes, anybody who's here illegally has broken the law and should be deported. But first and foremost, we need to take care of the crime problem that has infested so many of these cities. And so I'm confident that Tom Homan, being somebody who has been honored by people like Barack Obama for his service in the Border Patrol, should get the deference of these Democrats, regardless of their feelings about President Trump.
Sure.
Yep.
Well, let's pivot here. We're going to talk about Christopher Wray. He says he will resign as director of the FBI when Donald Trump takes office. Trump reacting on social media, saying in part, the resignation of Christopher Wray is a great day for America, as it will end the weaponization of what has become known as the United States Department of Injustice. I look forward to Kash Patel's confirmation so that the process of making the FBI great again can begin. Now, Dr. Nan, Wray was originally appointed by Trump. What went wrong here?
In the eyes of millions of Americans, including me, and obviously including President Trump, who's the man who will change this. But he betrayed the mission of the FBI as one of protecting the citizens of the United States from crime. It's not terribly difficult to define the mission, and yet what did his FBI, with his evasive answers about all this in the Congress, what did his FBI do? It allowed itself, he allowed this agency, he was the head, to be part of the Democrats' lawfare and harassment of political enemies, including parents asking questions at school board meetings, including pro-life advocates who had done nothing wrong. So I think it's a great thing for America that Mr. Wray is taking himself out of this. And I'm confident that Kash Patel will make the changes that need to be made.
Yeah, Robert, keeping with the theme of change, how do you expect Kash Patel to change the culture at the FBI? And do you expect any issues during his confirmation process?
Oh, of course. I mean, he is one of probably a handful of nominees who Democrats will target and try to derail. I think so far we have seen no hard nose from Republican senators when it comes to President Trump's nominees. So I expect them all to be confirmed, I should say. But in terms of what Kash Patel needs to do, first of all, let's remember that Kash Patel has seen from the outside what goes on inside the FBI. I mean, he used to work for Devin Nunes, a former congressman, and so he understands the culture does need to change. I think first and foremost, these intelligence gathering responsibilities that were given to the FBI after 9/11 probably need to either be stripped away from the FBI or certainly reformed. As Nan said, they need to get back to their core mission of law enforcement, stop spying on the American people, stop targeting people for their political beliefs. That's one of the things that has probably been most egregious. And it's really sad that Christopher Wray squandered this opportunity. I mean, he could have been a historic figure in the FBI's history. Instead, he just went along with the deep state and made no reforms that were really necessary.
Yeah, he became Comey too.
Unbelievable. All right, Dr. Nan and Robert Bluey, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank
you.
Well, Daniel Penny has been acquitted in the chokehold death of Jordan Neely. Our panel of legal experts join us next to break it all down. Welcome back. Well, Daniel Penny, the veteran Marine accused in the chokehold death of Jordan Neely, has been acquitted this week. After failing to reach a unanimous verdict on the charge of second-degree manslaughter, the jury then deliberated the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide, where Penny was found not guilty. For more on this, let's welcome in former prosecutor Amir Benno and senior counsel for the Lawfare Project, Gerard Filitti. Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Amir, let me start with you. First, I'd like to get your reaction to the verdict.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely the correct verdict. And it's a travesty that this had to actually go this far. And I think a huge surprise to the district attorney's office, which really played its cards wrong. And look, they hung on the more serious count, and then they probably thought that they were going to convict on the lower count in a compromise, and ultimately they acquitted on that. So you had a unanimous verdict to do that. So that's justice, but it should never have gotten to this point.
Well, other media outlets are less than convinced that the jury got it right. Gentlemen, let's take a listen.
O.J. Simpson was never found criminally guilty for those two murders. Fred Goldman, the father, along with his daughter, then sued O.J. Simpson civilly and won a fairly large verdict.
Later in the night, we're also going to talk about Penny and the verdict there. Mm-hmm. There you also have a victim who somebody determined did not deserve to continue living.
All right, so we've heard comparisons to O.J. Simpson, to Kyle Rittenhouse. Gerard, why isn't the verdict being accepted?
The verdict isn't being accepted because the progressive left wants to punish people who are defending themselves, exercising their rights, doing the right thing. They want to go after the people who they shouldn't be going after. Look, the bottom line is this is what we're seeing in the legal system. We're seeing a lawfare being played out, whether it's against Donald Trump, whether it's against any defendant like Daniel Penny. They're being targeted with lawfare. You heard the suggestion there, go after him civilly. That's what's being suggested. So Daniel Penny, just because he was acquitted by a jury, and rightly so, as Amir said, he's not off the hook. They're going to keep going after him because they want someone to suffer. They want someone to be punished. Why? Because it fits with the liberal notion of race-based decisions on who to prosecute, on progressive decisions on who to prosecute.
Hey, it's like Letitia James. She keeps going after Trump still. Yeah, he won, but I'm still going to get you.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
Don't matter about the law. With two lawyers on. Don't worry about the law. Unbelievable. Amir, let's pivot to another high-profile case, Luigi Mangione. Now, he obviously is suspected of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Now we have Manhattan District Attorney saying that Mangione may soon drop his fight against extradition to New York. Amir, how do you think this case is going to develop?
Well, it's not good for Mangione. The evidence is certainly piling up. I mean, he's got very limited choices available to him. First of all, he's going to lose any challenge to extradition. Essentially, they just have to be able to say that the person who is being charged with the crime is the person being held in Pennsylvania, and that's a very easy thing to do. And once you're able to establish that, you'll be able to extradite him. But once he's here, he's going to either have to try to challenge, suppress his statements or the evidence that was recovered from him. Maybe he'll advance an insanity defense and possibly just argue for jury nullification. We see a lot of people also on the left who are arguing that somehow it's noble and glorified to murder in cold blood somebody just because they hold a position that they don't like in corporate America or in healthcare, which is really a disgusting position to take. But he doesn't have much in terms of legal arguments on the merits to defend against this charge.
Yeah, it's beyond outrageous. He's being hailed a hero on social media. With the social media praises surrounding Mangione and the ill will against the healthcare system boiling up, Gerard, do you expect there to be a fair trial with this?
It's going to be very difficult. To Amir's point, I think one of the main things that defense lawyers are going to do is try to sway the public opinion to get jurors to nullify, to vote to acquit, even though the evidence may very well be overwhelming of his guilt. This is going to play out in the court of public opinion before it plays out in the court of law, and that is one of the best defense options available. Insanity is very hard to establish, so that's really all Mangione has going, is getting that public sympathy, getting that one juror or two jurors who hate the healthcare system, who hate the establishment, who support radical action, and then you have a man who might potentially walk free. But this is the normalization of hate against institutions. It's putting aside what's right, putting aside law, and voting with instinct, radical instinct, and that's where we're going.
Yeah, and showing no signs of remorse with that outburst that we saw.
Ooh, right?
Well, gentlemen, Amir Benno and Gerard Filitti, thank you so much, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, you too.
All right, coming up, New York City Mayor Eric Adams is teaming up with the newly appointed border czar, Tom Homan, to crack down on violent criminals and expedite deportations from the United States.
Welcome back. Reports of unidentified drones buzzing around New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and other East Coast states is stirring up major concern, with some of these unidentified aircraft having been spotted near military sites, putting everyone from ordinary citizens to government officials on edge.
Well, for more on these mystery drones, let's welcome in retired U.S. military intelligence officer assigned to the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, Steve Rogers, along with head of the UK government's UFO project, Nick Pope. Good morning, gentlemen. And Steve, it's good to see you, another friend of the Borellis.
Likewise. Thank you.
Well, Nick, sir, we'll go with you first. We'll come to you. So people are concerned about these drones. What's your best guess as to what we're seeing here?
Well, I think it could be a number of things in parallel. I mean, some of this, I think, is just going to turn out to be hobbyist drones. But clearly, from people on the ground, including law enforcement, some of the parameters sound over and above that. So that raises the disturbing possibility that some of this is attributable to a foreign adversary like China engaged in espionage against the United States. And that's why we need more answers than we're getting right now from the authorities.
Steve, I know you're in New Jersey, so maybe actually you might have seen some of these things, but something many people really aren't talking about is the multiple high-altitude balloons that flew from China last year, and one was eventually shot down by our own Air Force. The wreckage was sent to the FBI for analysis. Officials confirming that the balloon had intelligence gathering equipment, but hadn't transmitted the data back to China. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden called a significant spy tool, but downplayed it as not a major breach. Do you think these incidences are connected in any way, shape, or form?
Well, Tom, to begin with, all my years working with military intelligence, I can tell you that we have the most sophisticated intelligence gathering apparatus on the face of the earth. So there's no way that our government does not know the who, what, when, where, and why of all of this, which leads me to this. I believe to a certain degree, and I don't have the facts yet, that the U.S. government is involved in this somehow. We're probably testing some aerial platforms, and for some reason, the U.S. government does not want to provide that information to the people. And that's what's causing a lot of speculation, a lot of different theories. And by the way, Governor Murphy of New Jersey actually stated that there was no threat to anyone regarding these drones. Well, how does he know that unless he was given information the public wasn't given? So real soon, the government of the United States better shape up and get information to the people, because the last thing on earth we want to see is for people to take this whole incident in their own hands.
Oh, absolutely. The Borellis were talking about that on the way into the studio today. What if? Because they're huge. They're not these little drones. Nick, regarding the White House, now they're saying that they're taking this matter very seriously. In my opinion, it doesn't look that way. But what are your thoughts?
No, I agree. It doesn't look that way. And some of the statements that we've had, for example, the joint note put out by the FBI and Homeland Security, have really only served, I think, to rile people up and get them pretty concerned that they're not being told the full story. And this is getting out of hand. I mean, I have literally seen footage of people shooting at some of these things. Well, now I've said that the military and law enforcement, if it's safe to do so, should do that. But people absolutely should not take matters into their own hands, as I've seen yesterday on social media.
Yeah, Steve, coming to you. We've seen drones being used a lot in Ukraine, and there's a lot of concern that of threats to the American people. I mean, obviously, the government said there's nothing to be seen here. Walk away, sit down, and be quiet. But that the American people aren't like that. Do you think this represents any kind of risk to the American people?
Well, the only risk we have at this point, and Nick said it the right way, with the lack of information coming out, all sorts of rumors people are latching onto. Look, we've had a congressman actually say that there's an Iranian mothership off the coast of New Jersey. I mean, my goodness, if there was an Iranian mothership, that would be an act of war, and the United States Navy would engage that ship. So these are the kind of things that we're seeing increase as we move on. So the risk right now, I believe, is what we articulated a few minutes ago. Somebody taking this into their own hands and attempting to shoot one down, and that would be a great, great mistake.
Yeah. And Nick, we have about 30 seconds here. You want to close us out?
Sure. I mean, I think it just shows the lack of leadership at the moment, that the American people aren't getting the clear information and clear answers that they want, because this is a national security issue and should be treated as such.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, Steve Rogers and Nick Pope, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this morning.
Great seeing you, Team Borelli.
Thank you.
All right, folks, coming up, folks. Well, New York City Mayor Eric Adams is teaming up with the newly appointed border czar, Tom Homan, to crack down on violent criminals and expedite deportations from the United States. Will more sanctuaries follow suit? Two border experts.
It's controversial to have a dialogue with the people that are going to part of the next administration. Senator John. But yeah, and those individuals can vent or rant on Twitter. But I'm here to have conversations, and I think I'm just doing my job.
سيقدم لك تجاربا كثيرة لا تنسى. انسى كل ما كنت تعرفه عن ألعاب الحرب، فإن القتال واسع النطاق في لعبة War Thunder. قاتل في السماء وهاجم مواقعا معادية أرضية أو أغرق خصومك إلى قاع المحيط.
Well, that was Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman. Fetterman facing a lot of criticism from his own party after meeting with Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. But as he said, he's just doing his job. Fetterman has been a rare voice on the left who has been willing to work with the Trump transition team, showing a willingness to meet with appointees, even showing support for Elise Stefanik as UN ambassador. So why is he taking so much heat from Democrats?
We're going to find out very soon in the upcoming debate. For more, let's bring in the president of American Principles Project, Terry Schilling, our good friend, as well as our good friend, editor-in-chief of the National Memo and author of The Longest Con, Joe Conason. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Joe, let me come to you first. Do you think the criticism of Fetterman here has really any merit, or is he just doing the right thing by trying to reach across the aisle and finding some form of consensus?
Well, reach across the aisle always sounds good. I mean, I think probably a lot of senators look at a candidate like Pete Hegseth and they say he's not remotely qualified, and there are really serious questions about his character and fitness for the job. Republicans have raised the same questions. If you look at polls, there are many Republicans in the country who don't think Pete Hegseth ought to be Secretary of Defense. And it's strange to hear Fetterman say, well, Hegseth is going to be an important part of the next administration. We don't know that. We don't know if he can win confirmation. And really, Fetterman's job here is to determine whether Hegseth is fit for the job. If he thinks he needs to speak with Hegseth about that to determine that, then that's okay. I don't see anything wrong with him sitting down to talk to him. What would be wrong is to predetermine a vote before, for example, we have hearings on Hegseth where he can testify, and where we can hear opposition to his nomination. So we're getting ahead of ourselves here. But I don't see any huge objection to Fetterman speaking to Hegseth, and I haven't seen the Senate Democratic leadership object to it either.
Well, let's get Terry in here. Terry, does Fetterman's willingness to engage with the Trump team give you hope for the two parties working together under President Trump?
I think that John Fetterman is a fantastic voice on the left. Obviously, I don't really agree with him on many policies that, our organization cares about. But at the end of the day, I think Fetterman is one of those Democrats that's willing to work with Republicans on infrastructure packages and economic deals that benefit his state. And it's super smart, not just for the country and the benefit there, but for himself personally. You want to be, especially if you're in a state like Pennsylvania that's now voted for Donald Trump 2 times, you want to be someone that is viewed as reasonable. And this, I think, helps offset Fetterman's more progressive stances on other issues. But I do just want to say, I think it's smart. The candidates that Trump is putting forth are extremely qualified, but also extremely popular. So I think Fetterman's actually one of the smartest Democrats around right now.
Well, Joe, we've also seen some bipartisanship in New York with Eric Adams meeting with Tom Homan on the border crisis. So why do you feel like there are some Democrats not moving in the right direction?
I don't know what you mean by the right direction.
Let me rephrase that. Do you feel like some Democrats are moving in the right direction?
Oh, it's great that Fetterman worked with Republicans on infrastructure. The president worked with Republicans on infrastructure. It's the only reason we have infrastructure being funded in this country now. The former president wouldn't do it, the president-to-be. We'll see what he does when he's in office in terms of bipartisan work. But look, I've said many times on this show, I'm in favor of working across the aisle whenever that's appropriate. And, deporting violent criminals, yes, that is an appropriate topic for people to work together on.
Terry, your reaction, we have about 30 seconds to Mayor Adams working with Tom Homan and President-elect Trump.
I think it's important. Listen, New York has been greatly hurt by this entire migrant and border crisis that we have going on. And it's not just New York that's hurting, it's anyone that visits New York. If you try to get a hotel anywhere close to downtown, it's going to be $1,500 a night. It's preposterous. But I think Adams sees the writing on the wall. He knows where the country's heading. And he also knows how bad this crisis is hurting his own city financially and economically and socially. And so I think he's doing the smart thing here. We need to break bread more. We need to drink more beers together, like we said last week. I think this is all very smart. And people need to get on board President Trump's agenda because it's all about putting America first and Americans first.
All right. Well, Joe Conason and Terry Schilling, thanks so much, gentlemen. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.